My name is Chris Collier. I am the Executive Director of Renew Theaters, and I want to thank you for joining us tonight for the third film in our Middle Eastern cinema discussion series. We are thrilled to have Zardosht Afshari leading us through these films and this discussion. And very glad to have you all along as part of this conversation. This program is sponsored by the Vesta Fund, which allows us to make all of these events free for our members. So would like to welcome everyone who might be a member of the Ambler County Garden or Highway Theater, and also anyone who's a member of the Gettysburg Theater. Renew Theaters manages the first 4 theaters that I mentioned, and this program is starting as a partnership between Renew Theaters and the Majestic Theater in Gettysburg. And we hope to bring additional theaters on as the program expands. Since we do have a smaller crowd tonight, I don't know that I'm going to need to be doing a whole lot of moderating. So I think we can just start with the Zoom protocols. Zardosht is going to give an introduction and discussion and some talking points about the film to give us some background and some history. If everyone could remain on mute during that point. Then when we open up to conversation, just unmute yourself and feel free to jump in. I don't think we need to do hand raising and such tonight with this small round table that we have. Just a couple notes. We have just a couple more discussions wrapping up our fall program. On Monday the 20th, we have a discussion, or actually next week on the 14th, our Hollywood Classic series wraps up with Desk Set, the Hepburn Tracy comedy, and that will be led by Hannah Jack from Turner Classic Movies. On Monday the 20th, our Asian American film series wraps with a discussion of the film Minari, and that will be led by Stephen Chung from Princeton University. And the 4th film in this series, Taste of Cherry, will be on Tuesday, January 4th. So hopefully you'll be able to return and be part of that discussion. If you have missed any of the prior discussions, they're actually all recorded and on Eventive. So the login that you use to register for this will allow you access to those if you wanted to go back and check on the other films that we have already discussed, which were A Separation and Women Without Men. And knowing that it was just me and Zardosht last time, I think that the timing was bad on election night, talking about Women Without Men. That was such an incredible film that I really encourage everyone to go back and to hunt that film down and check out Zardosht's comments on it. So those are all of my notes. It is now my privilege to turn things over to Zardosht Afshari, who's an Iranian filmmaker whose short films have been screened in international festivals around the world, in the US, Iran, Poland, Croatia, India, and Italy. He is currently working on his MA in dramatic literature. He received his MA in dramatic literature from the University of Tehran, but is currently in the MFA program of film and media arts at Temple. And we are really happy to have Zardosht leading us through this conversation. So without further ado, it's all yours.
Thank you, Chris, and hi, everyone. I'm very glad that I'm here, and just I have a good news because we talked with Chris about my project. Actually, I did shooting in November, and it was very good. And also, it's about Iranian and American culture, maybe multicultural film. But tonight we have actually a film from Afghanistan. It was the first film actually was made after Taliban actually toppled in after actually United States sent its troop to Afghanistan. And I chose this film for some reasons, and I let you know why, because we have seen, or maybe you have watched some other films that was made about Afghanistan by Iranian or maybe other filmmakers around the world. But I had some reasons when me and Chris, we chose that film. Actually, we didn't know that this scenario again happens in Afghanistan and Taliban comes to power. So it was very interesting and maybe something sad, at least for me, but it happened, this history. And it's so I can share my screen, and I have prepared a presentation for this film. Okay, do you see my screen? Okay, so this is the, as Chris said, this is the third actually discussion about Middle Eastern cinema. And this is the first film from Afghanistan that we want to talk about. The name of the film is Osama, or maybe you have, all of us have heard Osama bin Laden, but this film is something else and talks about something else. So like other actually discussions that we had, I really like to first bring the audiences to the geography and maybe a little bit history of a country that the film made. And Afghanistan, maybe all of us have heard about Afghanistan and about some maybe main cities of this country. The Kabul is the capital. Kabul is the capital of Afghanistan, and some other main cities like Herat or Kandahar or Mazar Sharif or Jalalabad. They are the main cities of this country, and the neighbors of this country is Iran. That, you know, they have the kind of same culture, same languages, and Pakistan, Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, and Kyrgyzstan, and Tajikistan. And I want to let you know, maybe you know, but it's a multi-ethnic country. And you can find Pashtuns, Panjshiris. For example, the director of this film is from Panjshir, Siddiq Barmak. Pashtuns is the majority maybe of Afghanistan people are Pashtuns, and these are the people that actually Taliban comes from. And Tajiks and Hazara. For example, Hazara people, most of them are Shia. They're not Sunnis, and they are in minorities. They have been, you know, dislocated, and they have been killed sometimes because they were, you know, they were Shia, they weren't Sunni. And also we have Uzbek and Nuristanis. There are some maybe ethnic groups in this country, and some other, some other tribal or tribes in this country. And the majority of people in this country are Sunnis, and the minority are Shia. Some number says that maybe 95% of the country are Sunnis, or some other numbers actually says that 85%. But just maybe 1% of the people of this country are not Sunni or Shia. So the majority of the people of the country are Muslims. And it's very important because after that I want to talk about Mujahideen and resistance against Soviet Union. And if you have watched the film, you see that some characters say that we lost this character, or we lost my father or brother in this war or that war. So this information maybe would be helpful for you. So now I want to just back 44 years ago, or 40, maybe 3 years ago, and I'll just share with you a little history of this country and the wars that happens in this country. And when the characters, when, you know, Osama grandmothers or mother talk about, you know, they lost their, for example, brother, her brother or her uncle. These are the actually wars, or these are the clashes that happened in this country. In April 1978, a coup d'etat or coup happened by a Marxist government of Nuri Muhammad Taraki against Dawood Khan. Dawood Khan was maybe the first president of Afghanistan that he toppled monarchy in this country in 1973. And also after that, he was toppled by this coup d'etat by a Marxist government. And this Marxist government, or maybe these Marxist parties, were supported by Soviet Union on that time. And Soviet Union in 1979 intervened in Afghanistan, and Soviet Union army or Soviet Union troops stayed there for 10 years. And the last soldier of Soviet Union army actually left Afghanistan in 1989. And it is very important because in these 10 years, the governments tried to do some reforms in the country, the reforms that now we are talking about. But because most of the people were Muslim and they were against these reforms. For example, forced marriage, for example, the communist parties or communist government wanted to ban the forced marriage, but the people actually are resistant. They resist against these reforms. And they formed Mujahideen or Muslim Mujahideen. Muslim Mujahideen were, Muslim people, especially not in big cities or in, tribal area in Afghanistan, that they were supported by Pakistan, they were supported by United States, they were supported by Saudi Arabia to just fight against Soviet Union army and also the government that were backed by the Soviet Union. So they had it around maybe 10 years or maybe 12 years war with Soviet Union or Soviet Union backed governments in Afghanistan. In 1992, the communist government was toppled by Muslim Mujahideen. In one of the lines in the film, Osama's mother says, I lost my brother or I lost my husband in war with Russian. It was one of the, era of this country. And when the communist government was toppled by Mujahideen, civil war began because now they were different people with different, some Sunni, some Shia from different parts of the country who wanted to be the, top, who wanted to be the president. So they started fighting for 4 years. That was a civil war and they fought against each other. And in 1996, finally, it was Taliban that they gained the role, or they defeated all other groups or tribal armies or something. And this film is about this time, is 1996 until 2001, the years of Taliban rule. Taliban or Talib in Farsi or in Afghan means students of religion. So these were, in this film, you see that this, most of the forces of Taliban were educated in Pakistan, in some areas in Afghanistan, and they were hardliner Sunnis, and still they are hardliner Sunnis. And between 2001, when United States sent its troops after the September the 11th to Afghanistan, we had some maybe semi or quasi-democratic governments in Afghanistan until 2021 that I'm sure that all of you have seen and you have heard the news about that, when United States left Afghanistan. And again, Taliban came to power in Afghanistan. So this is a very, very, very short, actually, history that I want to use some notes or I want to refer to some parts of this history when we're going to talk about the film. Now I want to talk about Osama. Osama was made in 2003, and director is Siddiq Barmak, an Afghan filmmaker. He has been graduated from Moscow in filmmaking. He has Master of Art in filmmaking from Moscow, and he's from Panjshir. And this is very important. This is the first film by an Afghan filmmaker to be screened at Cannes Film Festival in 2003. So also this is the first film that was made or shot in Afghanistan after Taliban regime. And it didn't compete for Golden Palm because it was in a director's fortnight, but it's very important. But after September the 11th, and also after all of this happened in Afghanistan, it seems that festivals and audiences, especially Western audiences, were more curious to know about Afghanistan. So the film actually also is a very strong and very powerful film. Was the Golden Globe winner for Best Foreign Language Film in 2004. And these are some issues that are very important about this film. And still, people know Siddiq Barmak by this film. He has made some other films, but maybe his first film is the, maybe it has been his best film or maybe most famous film. Now, I want to just talk about an Iranian filmmaker, Mohsen Makhmalbaf. Why I want to talk about Mohsen Makhmalbaf? Because Mohsen Makhmalbaf supported Siddiq Barmak to make this film. If you check the title, you see that most of the crew of this film are Iranian. And also I've heard that Mohsen Makhmalbaf actually gave his camera to Siddiq Barmak to make this film. And during the shooting, during the production, during the post-production, he helped Siddiq Barmak to make that film. And also he was the person who encouraged Siddiq Barmak to send the film to the film festivals. So maybe you have seen some films by Mohsen Makhmalbaf, because Mohsen Makhmalbaf is one of the actually most famous Iranian filmmaker. And also he made a film named Kandahar, or Kandahar is a city in Afghanistan, in 2001, before September the 11th. And it's very important that if you watch both films, you see the influence or how Siddiq Barmak has been under influence of Mohsen Makhmalbaf. I will talk about it a little bit, but this is the film that was in Cannes Film Festival in 2001, but maybe the film was known better and was distributed better after the September the 11th. That it's very important, it's very interesting that this film was screened in White House by George Bush for other people to watch the film. Why? Because some people, some critics, some thinkers believe that the people of the world, especially the Western, maybe medias or audiences, forgot Afghanistan on that 5 years under Taliban regime. And after that, they were curious to know more about Afghanistan. And Kandahar, or Kandahar, is the name of the film, and also the name of one of the main cities in Afghanistan, was the first film that showed some image of this country to us. And it was distributed and hit most of the cinema theaters around the world, especially in Western countries like France and also the United States. There are some other films that maybe you have watched some films about Afghanistan, but in 2001 or 2007, there are some films actually that was made before and after Osama. I brought this film. Why? Because in this film, this film Baran by Majid Majidi was made actually in 2001. It was shot in Iran and is about a love story between an Iranian man and an Afghan girl. And it's very interesting. And this film also, the Afghan girl should pretend that she is a man. She should disguise herself because she wanted to support her family. What exactly happened in Osama? But the film was made in Iran because in Iran, when Afghan people, they were under Russian control or Russian government or Soviet Union, some of them actually took refuge to Iran and Pakistan. For example, I had a classmate that he was Afghan when I was in primary school in Iran. And so Iranian filmmakers actually made some films about Afghans, because in Iran we had cinema industry, but in Afghanistan we didn't have that. And also another film that maybe you have watched is The Kite Runner, is based on a novel by Khaled Hosseini and was made by Mark Foster. And these are the film that was made actually in 2001, 2007. And after that, we have other films, and because we have seen or we have heard more about Afghans people or Afghan society based on the documentaries that we have been made. So something that is very interesting in all of this film, especially in The Kite Runner, in Kandahar, and also in Osama, you see that in both films, in Osama and also in Kandahar, we see Afghanistan through the Western eyes. In the first scene of the film, or Western lens, to see that a journalist or a filmmaker actually makes a documentary about Afghanistan. This is what exactly happened in the first scene of Kandahar, that Afghan Canadian journalist comes from Canada to Afghanistan during the Taliban era. And the character, the name of this character is Espandi in the film. He speaks a little bit with broken English through the camera. It exactly the same of the scene or first scene of Kandahar. Some critics actually have some ideas about why these strategies have been used by Sadiq Barmak or Mohsen Makhmalbaf, and I will talk about that in next slide. Before that, I just want to refer to, because these films like Kandahar or Osama actually have been named in Burqa film. Burqa, this is the chador or kind of veil that Afghan women should put on during the Taliban regime. And this shot was very actually interesting for me, that in just one frame, you can see 3 different generations of Afghan women in the film. And the house, the broken house for me was a metaphor of Afghanistan. But this is a question. I don't know, for me it was a metaphor, but I'm not sure. But you see that 3 other women in just one frame. Another thing about women, you see in most of the shots, if you have watched the film, see that the Afghan women are behind the curtains or behind the bars. For example, in this scene when Osama's mother talks to her husband's friend about her situation, she and Osama are behind the curtains. And also in one of the shot at the end of the film, you see Osama is behind the bars. Okay, so this is something that I mentioned about seeing or watching Afghanistan through the Western lens or through the Western point of view. Mark Graham, in his book, there is a book, Afghanistan in the Cinema. He has a very, very kind of maybe criticize Makhmalbaf for these issues. One of them is, he says that Afghanistan before sending the American forces to this country was the land without images. Maybe most of the audience, especially Western people, didn't have any image of this country and didn't know what happened exactly in this country during those 5 years. Now, some filmmakers like Mohsen Makhmalbaf is an Iranian. He came to Afghanistan. He founded an art house there, and he tried to help the filmmakers like Sadiq Barmak and other to make film or documentary about the country. These filmmakers like Sadiq Barmak in this film, you see that they are giving more information and image of Afghanistan to the world, especially Western audiences. Why I'm saying especially Western audiences? Because you see in this film that in the first shot, the character speaks in English, and the journalist also is from Western country. And we have some other actually nurses that, or a nurse in the film that also, she is from a Western country and she speaks, I think she speaks English or maybe French. So Mark Graham says that Mahmal Baf or Sadiq Barmak uses this strategy to have more market in the Western media, to just, or maybe they want to have more audiences around the world. So this is a questions, or maybe this is the way that we can see the film. If Sadiq Barmak is dramatizing the film or just revealing the information. For example, in some scenes that I can bring, one of them is the scene that mother and Osama's grandmother talks about how they have lost their family. They are just doing this monologues or soliloquies without any reason. So just they are revealing the information. Or another scene, if you remember, when the old man took Osama to his house, because now based on the culture or based on the rule of that country, he was the husband of her. The women are talking to Osama and just they are revealing all the information. And we see some soliloquies and some monologues, and they are like the documentary is just revealing the information, and we learn about what happened in this country, what happened in this culture during maybe 30 years ago until now. So this is a question that when I watch the film, I'm asking myself, is Sadiq Barmak shared visually or just verbally with us? This information are shared with us visually or just verbally? And so is a combination, maybe combination of documentary or maybe visual style to share the information and give more images or more history of Afghanistan in a maybe 80-minute film. I also brought director intention. This is based on an interview that Sadiq Barmak had with BBC after Cannes Film Festival in 2003. And he says this film is about the hopelessness of the years under Taliban rule. There are some changes, it's about 2003, but no big change on the wall. It seems that Sadiq Barmak was true, because still it seems that there are familiar problems in Afghanistan after 20 years. Some girls go to school and work, but most women are poor and uneducated. Many have to beg, and most are still afraid of the Taliban. So not all the problems actually come from Taliban, because some of them comes from the culture that this country had. In some, for example, I mentioned this during the communist era in Afghanistan, they wanted to do some reform by their own way, maybe in a communist way, but the people actually resisted against those reforms. For example, one of them is free education for women. And they resisted against those reforms. Now they are looking for those reforms to be happened or to be, I hope. So, because one of my favorite thing in filmmaking is also screenwriting, and also in all of the films, I brought this curve or maybe arc of three-act structure in this film, and Act 1, Act 2, and Act 3, and climax of the film. The film is a kind of linear because it's not just a character-based film like Women Without Men that we talked about that last month or previous months. The film introduces the characters, especially the main character, Osama, within the socio-political situation in Afghanistan under Taliban rule. But as I mentioned, we follow the actions of the film, but still there are some information that are given to us in monologues, and sometimes they are without reason. Maybe just filmmakers tries to maybe add another layer to the film, historical or maybe socio-political layer to the film. And about the form and cinematography, in some is a combination of documentary based and cinematic way of cinematography. When I say documentary is a kind of, here you see how high key actually handheld camera and the lighting is high key and the camera is handheld or moving. But here you see very nice lighting with practical light and low key. And Cedric Barma shows us that he wants to use different methods or different strategies to just narrate his story. So he doesn't want to make just a documentary based film, and also he doesn't just want to be, all the time his camera be, not moving and just show some shots like this that we see. The lighting is fascinating. And just because I just brought some questions, some of them actually, they are the questions that when I watch the film, I ask myself, and so I want to share with the audiences with you. What do you think about the name of the film? The name of the film is Osama. And most of the people, especially in the United States, knows Osama as Osama bin Laden. But, this is a name for a girl in the film. And I think it has several meanings that is different with Osama bin Laden that we know. And I know that maybe most of us actually follow the news or maybe news of Afghanistan, but I wanted to know, did you find or see anything in this film that you didn't know or feel about Afghanistan? This is the I'm very interested to know because this film has been made in 2003 and now we are just in 2021. And the last question is how Afghan men have been portrayed in the movie. Because I talked about Afghan women, they are behind the bar, they are under burqa, they are behind the curtain, and how Afghan men have been portrayed in the movie. Thank you for your time, and it was very short. I tried to just encapsulate everything, just maybe 20 minutes, I don't know. So if you have any questions, any comments, or just.
William, yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much for that, Zardosht. Especially helpful with some of the historical context. I'm wondering if you have any sense for what the dramatic date of the film is. Obviously, it's supposed to be taking place during that 90s, 92 to, 2001, something period where the Taliban is in control of the country. But I was trying to figure out, is the Taliban kind of seizing control of this area where the film's taking place? Is it kind of when the Taliban is ascendant, or is it more that the Taliban has been kind of established control? So I was just sort of wondering when, if you could guess, about what year the movie seems to be taking place. Are there any clues?
I think based on the information, based on the, because there are some journalists, one actually Western journalist in the film and also some, it seems that it's maybe the first year of Taliban came to power, because still people are not familiar with Taliban. And Taliban, in one of the scene, as you see, Osama is drawing something on a window, and some people just, flee from Taliban, because it shows that Taliban came to power and now they want to, rule the country. So because it has not been actually mentioned in the film, and but I think it's maybe the first year or first months of Taliban coming to power in Kabul, because Taliban had power in different areas, not in Kabul, but they actually gained the control in Kabul on maybe 96. So it seems that the first months or maybe the first year of taking control of Kabul.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And we have I'm sorry, just I want to add something. Sorry, yes. We have a very good film in history of cinema, Rome Open City by Roberto Rossellini, that it was made when German actually soldiers was, leaving Rome. And so, because now on that film, we could say that it happened in 1945, because we knew about when German actually soldiers, but here we don't have any clue to say exactly what when happened exactly. Gus?
Yeah, as far as the way men are portrayed, it seems to me they were always either carrying guns or locks. So it was very, men were portrayed as very oppressive.
Very oppressive. So because I asked this question because we see different men in the film. One of them is Osama's father friends, actually, that he helped them and he knew about these guys, but still he helped them. He was former Mujahideen, based on the information that we have about Mujahideen, because Osama's mother told him that you were my husband's friend, and you fighted against, but he wasn't a violent man, and also he kept a secret. And also we have another man that his father died in the film, and Osama's mother wanted to help his father. Also he helped Osama and her mother, but Taliban didn't actually let him to do that. So as you said, but yeah, most of them we see guns and oppressive, and they force people, or especially women, to have burqa or something. They just cover themselves.
I think it was a bit heavy-handed that way. A question is, the mother was a trained medical professional, wasn't she? And that makes me wonder why she couldn't find any work.
After Taliban or before Taliban?
Well, when the movie begins.
When the movie begins, before that, he had a job. He had a job in hospital, because the manager of hospital actually owed her 2 months, and he should pay her, and said, no, I don't have any money, I can't pay you. And William, I think is another reason that it says that it is maybe the first months that Taliban came to power, because when Taliban came to power, they said women should go home, and we don't need any, maybe nurses or maybe teachers, especially female. And if they want to work, if they want to have job, they just should be work or teach women for women, men for men. And so she couldn't find a job, because they closed the hospitals and they put these bans especially on women. And still right now in Afghanistan, based on the news, because still women are fighting for the job, and they say, okay, we want to have education, we want to be teacher, we want to be nurse or something. And we should wait to see what happens.
Do you know how he chose the name Osama? He certainly knew Osama bin Laden. Was that to attract a bigger audience? I'm sure it certainly had that effect.
Yeah, it was a question that they asked. Actually, I haven't talked to Mr. Makhmalbaf or Mr. Sadiq Barmak, but yeah, I think the first one is, yeah, it attracts more maybe attention, but also it's for me, it's my answer. Maybe it's completely wrong, but I think it's a metaphor that how in this country, you know, this film has been shot in 2003. The Talib or the students that were educated under Taliban regime, now they are around, 30. Okay, now they are new Taliban. So I think it shows how a girl could be named Osama, or how a boy could be, based on those educations, could be Osama 30 years later. This is another way that I think about, actually.
Could I jump in?
Of course.
Did I hear correctly that, I mean, there's one scene when they're at the school and they're talking, the kids among themselves, and don't they say at one point, come train and then we'll go fight with Osama bin Laden? Didn't I hear, is his name mentioned? So I had thought that the name is sort of a play on almost that sort of toxic masculinity that Gus was hinting out, that, we do see two kind, even-keeled men, but they both leave. They both realize that they can't live in this society. So the friend escapes to Pakistan, and we don't know what happens to the man after his father passes away, but we assume that he probably flees as well.
Yeah.
And it's the boy that we meet in the beginning who names her Osama. And I wonder if that sort of naming is, to convey a sense of like, no, just, that she is a boy, she has that strength, she is this type of person.
Yeah.
And it almost makes an even starker contrast in terms of, I was actually surprised at how, I mean, she is so brave through so much, but I don't know, the last movie that I saw about Afghanistan was when we showed The Breadwinner, and it has a similar story of a girl dressed as a boy, and that movie has a much happier ending and a much braver, girl who perseveres and sort of pushes through. And I kind of thought that it might go in that direction, but especially after all the trials she went through. But I mean, she definitely, when she's in the pit, and crying, she cracks. And I felt that her being named Osama was a very strange and stark contrast to, what he was trying to project onto her, and, her eventual cracking and future fate. So that's my take on it.
Yeah, I agree. I think we have different answers for that. But when Espandi, the guy who helped Osama, said her name or his name is Osama, you're right, because all of them knew Osama. Osama is completely a man, is a masculinity, is a symbol of masculinity on that country. And yeah, you're right. I agree, totally agree. William, did you have a question? You raised your hand. I saw your hand.
Oh yeah, I was just going to, you had talked a little bit about the overtures to a Western audience that the movie's making. And I was struck by those same scenes where you're talking about, where there's a kind of random monologue that just gives background in a very kind of expository way. Thinking in general about the film's reception, you hinted that it was quite well received by Western critics. The Americans or NATO or occupying forces are not mentioned anywhere in this movie, but it feels like they are a conspicuous presence. It's not surprising that European or American audiences were hungry not just for more information about Afghanistan, but specifically for a film that really details the absolute horror of the regime that's been overthrown. So I wonder if, I don't know, I don't want to use the phrase propaganda in the sense that I have no reason to doubt the reality of what is being portrayed about the Taliban in the film, but I can certainly see how the film provided something to American viewers or even to Western European viewers at that time that was very appealing, which was, look at how terrible all of this was. And without even having to say it, there's a kind of implied, thank goodness we've gotten rid of that, right? So I wonder how you think that colored the reception, even how the film was made and marketed.
Actually, you said exactly what Mark Graham said in his book. Exactly. Mark Graham says, and maybe 50%, maybe Makhmalbaf in Kandahar. I'm not sure you have watched Kandahar or not. In Kandahar or in also Sadiq Barmak in Osama, I'm not sure that they have done it intentionally but the way that they have shown this, you are right. You have said, okay, everything happened here. They are terrible people. They can't, do anything. And so we should go and invade this place and just let them know how to live and bring our value there. And also Mark Graham says, there is no clue about the reasons who helped Mujahideen, who helped Taliban, who formed Taliban. And there is no, actually information about the reasons of this happening in this country. For 50 years, I told you, for 50 years, all the generations experienced different wars in this country. One by Soviet Union, one, Pakistan helped, Taliban, Saudi Arabia, United States. So you are right. And when I say you are right, yeah, it's something that is behind, is maybe one of the layer of the film that Makhmalbaf or Sadiq Barmak should come and talk about, and say why you don't say anything about that. For example, I actually read in Graham's book that President Bill Clinton, during the Taliban era, invited some Taliban people to talk about the, oil pipe in Afghanistan or something during the time that it happens in Afghanistan. So this is what Graham says, that says, okay, this is a kind of invitation for United States or Soviet Union to just go and invade Afghanistan. And yeah, this is something that critics that, makes sense actually.
I agree with that completely. It's also another question is, are you Muslim?
Actually, I'm not a religious guy, but yeah, my family are Muslim.
Background is okay.
Yeah, background is Muslim.
Okay, I imagine the director is the same.
Yeah, maybe is a secular person, but yeah, I think
because what it says about Islam is insidious too. I don't like the picture it paints of what Islam is to Westerners who don't know anything about it. Who are really willing to hear someone like Ayaan Hirsi Ali come and talk about how bad, misogynistic and whatever it is. So I'm afraid that this film contributes to that as well as invites invasions, 20-year occupations. So that's a misgiving I have about it. I mean, there are some good qualities to the film too. Some of the visuals were good, but it was relentlessly, I think, Islamophobic.
You know, this is the actually critics, or that most of the time also have been mentioned for some Iranian films when they come to festivals, and some people say, okay, they are anti-Iranian film. They are just saying something against Iran. I don't know all the directors in Afghanistan and in Iran, but I know that some of them don't do it intentionally, or they don't want to do that. But the problem is the issues or problems in the country is so many issues and so many problems. When they want to capsulate everything in just 90-minute film, it's a capsule of problems, you know, and just, you know, share this capsule of problems with the audiences around the world. And I'm sure about Iran, because I was in Iran 2 years ago and I came here, and not all of the things are negative, but when they have been portrayed in some films, as you said, shows Islamophobic, you know, maybe idea. But in this film, yeah, anyone that watched the film, Taliban is, you know, equals to Islam in this film, and you say, oh, what is real Islam? Okay. So
I lived for 5 years recently in Oman, and the gentlest men and the strongest women I have ever met are Omani Muslims.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it's the same in Iran. It's not just Oman. It's the culture itself. It generally produces very, very good people, and I hate to see that challenged, that distorted. Although I'm sure there are examples of that in Afghanistan right now with the Taliban. They're extremists in every religion.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, this is exactly actually that Mark Graham says, and says Mark Graham has done some interviews about some women, and it was very interesting for me that they said, we don't wear this burqa because of Taliban, because this is our culture, because we want to be covered, you know? So do you have any? William, sorry, you raised your hand.
Yeah, I mean, that gets, obviously the burqa point is interesting to the point where in some countries, France or Canada, there've even been, you know, moves to outlaw the wearing of head coverings of any kind. So you can see, along with what Gus is saying, how this could play into Islamophobic impulses, imperialistic impulses. But I think it also gets to the question of audience, right? And the problem of, you know, who is this film for? Is this a film, an Afghan film, fundamentally for Western audiences? You know, as you were pointing out, literally starting out with the Western camcorder. Is it always imagining a Western audience, or does it speak to an Afghan audience as well? Because the Afghan audience is necessarily going to have a much more textured, nuanced, multi-layered sense of their own society. They might better understand, you know, ethnic distinctions. They might be less likely to collapse all of Islam into this type of fundamentalist movement. They might better understand who the Taliban are, who Al-Qaeda is, how these different religious organizations interface. But it's a little bit inevitable, I think, then, that if you then turn around and you want this to be also for a Western audience, this kind of simplification starts to feel almost kind of inevitable. Not for all Western viewers, but for many of them, that you sort of start viewing it the way that Gus is suggesting, where the Taliban is Islam, and, you know, justifying occupation and even justifying domestically Islamophobic impulses.
Actually, because of that, because I agree with you, William, and because of that, I brought that questions about great question about Afghan men in this film, because there are some men, and I now, when you were saying that, I was remembering that it was a marriage or wedding celebration in the film that Taliban people come and knock the door and said, okay, my mother has died or something. And we see the people of Afghanistan, they don't like this way of, ruling the country, especially men, they are against Taliban. Maybe they are, Taliban, not in minority, but not in complete majority, but they have been supported by some monies, something around Afghanistan, not just the people of Afghanistan. These are something that Sadiq Barmak and also Mohsen Makhmalbaf have been criticized in their films. They didn't show this other layers of the society. As you said, sometimes it seems they were mad at Taliban, they hate Taliban, and they just simplified something. But they say, Makhmalbaf and Sadiq Barmak several times had said, we just wanted to bring attention to this country that has been under war, for 50 years. We just wanted to bring attentions from different parts of the world to this maybe forgotten land in the world.
Grant, I see that you've been popping in and out a couple times. Did you have a question?
Yes. Hi, Professor again. How are you?
Hi, how are you?
I was reading afterwards and I saw that Osama also means lion. Does that have anything to come back into it? Like into the character itself? I read Osama means lion. Does that have anything to do with it?
Yeah. Also, Osama, because it's an Arabic name, it's not a Farsi or Persian name. Also, in Arabic means lion, but because of that, I asked the question of the name of the film, because we can have different, points of view toward the name of the film. When you bring this Osama as an Arabic name, Arabic means lion. So he's a lion. He's not a he's not a girl. He's a boy, and he's lion. And lion, at least in our culture, I don't know, maybe lion is a masculinity and very powerful and strong, animal, or maybe man. Yeah, you're right. This is another way of thinking about the name of the film, actually.
I really liked it, by the way. Yeah, good choice.
Thank you. The reason, because I told you that why I wanted to let you know why I chose that film, because we had several films we could choose, actually, me and Chris. Why? Because I told myself, if I bring a film by Makhmalbaf or Majid Majidi or other guy, not Afghani guy or Afghan guy, say, okay, this is a kind of maybe imperial way or maybe Orientalist way to this society. So I said, maybe the best choice is the film by an Afghan guy who made a film about his society. But still, there are some elements of those, point of view toward the society. Thank you so much. I learned a lot from you in this discussion.
Yeah, of course.
Well, thank you, Zardosht, for leading us through this discussion of this film. It was a wonderful selection, and I think a very eye-opening one. And I really appreciate all the comments that everyone had. I know our next film is A Taste of Cherry in January. Did you want to leave us with any just parting words or comments, or just to tee up the next film to encourage people to join us again?
Of course. Kiarostami is maybe the most famous Iranian filmmaker in the world. And also this film is the first Iranian film won the Golden Palm in Iranian cinema. And also, it's very important, in Kiarostami film, we have a character, he's an Afghan guy. And so I love that film. and I think is a kind of existentialist film, and we can talk in 1 hour at least about Kiarostami cinema and why he chose that ending for his film, and some issues like, you know, policies or strategies that he had to show different ethnic groups in Iran in just one film.
Perfect. Well, that whet my appetite. I'm looking forward to diving in. And thank you again for joining us, everyone. And thank you for walking us through that title.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.